The mic quality gets better, I promise. The first few clips sound echoey, and the next few have a little static, but there's nothing I could do about that. It gets better after the first 3 minutes.
In any group of friends, there are going to be inside jokes. These are things that are funny to the people inside of the group, but tend to make zero sense to anybody out of the group. A similar concept can be seen in more professional groups. Lots of times, groups of people come up with words for certain things relating to their shared interest that make zero sense to anybody outside of said group. These types of words are usually called jargon, and can be seen pretty much everywhere you look. There's car jargon, computer jargon, weightlifting jargon, and even video game jargon. These words often serve as sort of an entry barrier for people looking to join the group, as the people already in the group expect everyone in said group to know these words, even if they're brand new. When it comes to fighting games, they're no exception. Fighting games arguably have more jargon than almost any other community due to how many small complexities the genre holds. Today, I'm going to be explaining the most commonly used fighting game jargon, to hopefully open the gate of understanding a little bit easier for newer players. First, I'm going to briefly explain why these words exist. In a genre as vast as fighting games, it's often hard to remember the exact words for different moves. Hell, in Tekken 7, most characters have upwards of 100 unique moves each, all with their own separate name. With the game's current roster of 50 characters, that's over 5,000 attacks to remember, just for one game. Nobody's gonna do that. So people lump moves into categories that can be easily named in order to talk about said moves. Think of how many projectiles are in Street Fighter. Okay, now name every single one of them. Stump? That's why we call projectiles in fighting games fireballs. That's just one name instead of a million possible titles for moves that serve a similar function even across multiple games. That is why jargon exists. So that we don't have to sit down with a list of every single fighting game attack ever and make sure we remember every single attack Gon from Tekken 3 had. Also, this video is going to be sort of a 1.0 version. With how many weird words there are in fighting games, combined with the fact that every single game has its own special phrases, there's zero chance of me getting everything. If there's a term I left out, please tell me in the comments and I'll update the script. In addition, I will be making videos tackling game-specific jargon in the future. After I finish all this, I intend to release a sort of supercut of all these videos combined into one long one. With that out of the way, let's get on with the video. Let's start with the basics. Fighting games have controls, just like any other game. They have buttons for attacks and a stick for movement. In order to master the aspect of controlling your character, lots of people have written guides on how to perform certain combos or special moves, but they tend to be written in sort of a secret language. Some games use different languages from each other, and these languages are what people call notation. Let's discuss some of the most commonly seen notation styles in fighting games, starting with movement, then button abbreviations. Abbreviated notation is the simplest notation style for your stick position. Each movement has a name, and each name is abbreviated based on the first letter of the movement's name. For example, a crouching punch would be notated as C.P, P for punch. Ryu's Hadoken input is inputted with a quarter circle forward motion, and would be notated as QCFP, Q, quarter, C, circle, F, forward. Likewise, there is QCB for quarter circle back, HCF/B for half circle motions, and 360 for a full circle motion. Motions other than this get a little tricky, however. Ryu's Shoryuken is inputted by flicking forward, down, then down and forward. This would probably be notated as DP for the move's English name, Dragon Punch. All moves with this input follow this name. There's way more, but explaining every single notation in this style would have to be its own video. Overall, this notation style is pretty simple to understand, but pretty messy overall. And that's not even mentioning the fact that people who don't speak English will get easily confused by this, as QCF means nothing to them, since it's not in their language.
Can you tell I'm not a fan of this one?
Numpad notation is a very common way of explaining the positions of a stick or D-pad when it comes to moving your character around. It relates to each direction accessible by moving your control stick around to a number on the D-pad. This notation assumes your character is facing right, making the number 1 equate to holding diagonally left and down, whereas the number 9 is holding up and right. Oftentimes, these numbers will be listed in a string, and if all the numbers in the string are hit by their respective stick position, something will happen in-game. For example, Ryu's Hadoken special move is inputted with a quarter circle forward motion, starting directly down and moving to directly forward. This would be notated as 2-3-6-P, where P stands for punch, of course. This form of notation is generally considered to be the better of the two, as it does not have the same language barrier as the abbreviated notation does, and has one simple rule every single input follows, instead of tons of made-up acronyms inside of the word. The way your buttons are notated varies significantly from game to game, because obviously you don't use the same moves in every single game, so let's just go over some of the more common ones. In games featuring light, medium, and heavy variants of punches and kicks, such as Street Fighter or Skullgirls, moves are abbreviated like this. LP equals light punch, MP equals medium punch, HP equals heavy punch. Replace all the Ps with Ks, and you have the kick variants of these moves. Games with buttons divided by limb tend to be notated using simple numbers for each limb. Left arm is 1, right arm is 2, left leg is 3, and right leg is 4. Games with these notation styles would be Mortal Kombat or Tekken. Finally, there are some oddballs. The example I'll give is Guilty Gear, because it has buttons unique only to Guilty Gear, and this channel is also mainly gear focused. In Gear, P equals punch, K equals kick, C.S equals close slash, F.S equals far slash, HS or H equals heavy slash, and D equals dust. Now we're getting more into universal jargon. A fireball is any projectile shot from your character. Hadoken? Fireball. Ice ball? Fireball. An actual bullet from an actual gun in real life? No, fireball. A reversal is a move you use when your opponent is in charge of the flow of the match. Whether you are knocked down to the ground or constantly blocking tons of enemy attacks, a reversal is a move specifically tailored to reverse the flow of momentum into your favor. The most famous example of a reversal would be... DP is short for Dragon Punch, which is the English name for Ryu and Ken's signature Shoryuken attack. When people talk about a DP, there are usually two things they could mean. The first is an invincible reversal that leads to big damage if punished, and the second is a rising anti-air attack. Usually, though, DP means the former. An important thing to note is you can only call a move a DP if it's inputted with a specific motion or button, and not holding a direction, for reasons which will be explained. Flash Kick is the famous move used by Guile in Street Fighter. Functionally, it behaves exactly the same as a DP. It's an invincible reversal that functions as a rising anti-air. The main difference is that this move can only be accessed by holding down for a certain amount of time, then flicking up. This makes it so that if you weren't already charging the move before the time comes where you need it, you can't use it. DPs are able to be used reactively, while flash kicks are used foresightedly. The fact that you can't react with a flash kick on a whim is usually exchanged for a much stronger move, often having a larger hitbox, more damage, or more invulnerability. A special move input style done by inputting a set of directions and a button. For example, throw a fireball with quarter circle forward. A special move input that can only be done by holding a direction down and then flicking the opposite direction and pressing a button. This balances more powerful special moves by putting them on a timer and making them impossible to react with unless you were already charging them previously. Named after Fei Long's special move string in Street Fighter II, a Rekka is any special move divided into multiple parts or moves. Usually, Rekkas will have 2 or 3 inputs that you have to do in order to input the whole move, but this comes with the advantage that you can stop the special move in the middle of it, or finish it depending on the situation. For example, Leo Whitefang's Rekka starts with a 2-3-6-S motion, then you can do a 2-3-6-HS motion to do a cross-up attack, and then you can finish it with a final 6-2-3-S for a final hit. The final hit is not safe on block, so you don't want to use it every time. The cross-up is also not safe, but you can use it on block to try and trick the opponent. This form of option is what makes a Rekka strong. A dive kick is an attack that changes the air trajectory of the user. This type of move is often easily spammable and has become a bit of a meme in the fighting game community, which is what inspired the joke fighting game of the same name. A super powerful timed move, usually accessed by meeting certain conditions in a match. This can be as simple as having the meter, or as complex as collecting the 7 Ghost Dragon Balls. This one's pretty simple. Most fighting games have a super meter, which can be spent on a massive, powerful attack, which is what we call a super. Some games come up with creative names for their meter or super, like how in Gear you have tension and use overdrive. But there's still super meter and super moves. When you punish the opponent for whiffing an attack. A sweep is a low attack that when landed, knocks the opponent to the floor. Sweeps are usually punishable or at least minus on block, but there are a few exceptions. Speaking of minus on block, what does that mean? When people call a certain move plus or minus, they're referring to the frame data of said move. To put it simply, all attacks have a startup, active, and recovery state. Startup is before the hit, active is during, and recovery is after. Calling a move plus or minus refers to the state it leaves you in during the recovery of your move. If your attack has a slow recovery time, you will be minus, and the enemy will be plus, meaning if you both attacked with the same move, theirs would come out faster than yours could, leading you to getting hit. The exact opposite is true if you're the one who's plus. Admittedly, this is a really complicated concept, so go check out this video by Core Gaming. They explain frame data excellently in a way I could never hope to do in a 1 to 2 minute section. Moving from a heavy normal to a lighter one in a string. Do you really need me to explain this one? It's something you can't block. An unblockable grab move performed up close with a special move input. These often lead to big damage, but are very punishable if missed. A command normal is a standard attack that cannot be inputted by holding neutral or down and has an input unique to their character. For example, Axel has a command normal assigned to 3p. A dash forward or back done with a special move input. Usually this functions like a mini stance with cancels out of said dash, but that's nowhere near a universal rule, just a small trend. A parry is any move that, when inputted, blocks an incoming attack leading to some sort of advantage. Most parries have a counterattack after them, but some just cancel all block stun or have an additional positive effect. Parries can be a part of every character's base toolkit, or sometimes will be accessible by a special move only to 1 or 2 characters. Now this one is an important one to know. Basically, Okizeme, often shortened to Oki, is the state of being standing and free to act while your opponent is on the ground and cannot move. You can't hit your opponent here, but you can set yourself up to be in an advantageous position. You can throw out a meaty to hit the opponent as soon as they stand up, meaning they have no choice but to block your incoming attack. You could also mix up your opponent with tricky moves to block, hoping to open them up once more and knock them down. You can even step back and get into a more comfortable range for your character, or charge up a chargeable special move. Purposely dropping a combo in the middle of it in order to catch the opponent off guard and start a new one. Abare is an attack during your opponent's pressure. Over in Street Fighter, some people call this a counter poke. Basically, it's when you throw out a quick button in the middle of your opponent's offense as a relatively soft callout. For example, one could consider a Wake Up DP or Wake Up Super Abare. There are 2 types of stun, hit stun and block stun. Hit stun is the recoil your character feels after getting hit by an attack, and block stun is the same thing but you're blocking. Hit stun lasts longer than block stun, hence why you want a block stun. You know that really frustrating thing that happens when your character gets beat on too much in Street Fighter and you can't move for a bit? That's a dizzy, and it exists in a lot of different fighting games. Salt is what we call the frustration you feel during or after losing a match. A Touch of Death combo, or TOD for short, is a combo that when executed, kills no matter what. These are often very hard to pull off, and usually will never be seen in a real match, but it's always fun to try to figure out if your character can theoretically win a match after landing just 1 hit. TODs almost always don't work on every character, as variable health means that you could possibly TOD a lower health character, but it would be impossible to TOD a higher health one. A counter hit is granted when you hit an opponent during one of their attacks. Landing a counter hit usually leads to either more damage, more hit stun, or a combination of the 2. Combos are performed by making 2 attacks hit after each other in a time frame that your opponent cannot get out of. A hit confirm is when you check to see whether an early attack of your string lands before you continue on with the rest of it, because oftentimes the rest of it is not safe on block, while the starting few moves are. In some games, in order to perform a combo, you have to time moves after the recovery of your first move ends. This is called a link. In other games, you can press the button for the next attack right after the first one lands, which will cancel the recovery of the first attack entirely and start the second one. This is called a Gatling. Almost every fighting game has air specials. These are inputted the same way you input a normal special, but you have to be airborne to use it. Tiger Knee is a special trick to help use these moves as low to the ground as possible, so that they can hit opponents who are on the ground. In order to Tiger Knee an input, do the motion for the input on the ground, and as you press the button to input the special, quickly jump. This will allow the special to be inputted very close to the ground with less effort than if you jumped first. This is tricky to pull off and requires quite a bit of practice to master. Also, there are tons of different techniques for Tiger Knee, so ask your community about how they Tiger Knee certain moves. IAD, or Instant Air Dash, is a technique found in air dash fighters where you input a forward jump, return to neutral, then quickly flick forward, air dashing as low to the ground as possible. If you input a forward jump or 9, you won't need to input forward twice for the air dash as usual. An option select is a set of inputs that covers multiple different situations. This is best explained using an example, and there's a pretty simple option select in Street Fighter V relating to getting up after a hard knockdown. When you rise from the ground, hold down back for about 1/3 of a second, and then press the throw button. This way, no matter if they go for a meaty attack or a throw on wake up, you will either block the meaty or tech the throw. Option selects are good to learn so that you can move more of the match to muscle memory and start thinking about more important pieces of the match. Like its name, this definition is a little fuzzy. I actually have a little personal story with this one. The example I gave for grabs in Street Fighter V have been what people have defined fuzzy as for me. I consider that to be an option select, but many people consider a fuzzy option one where you input an action just after blocking, covering the block or any subsequent action the enemy could take. Set play that leads into itself. Can also be called snowballing, or by me, being put in the schmixer. Negative edge refers to using a special move by releasing the button instead of pressing it. Some moves can be done with either negative edge or a regular button press, but some moves are only inputable with negative edge. Zato 1's Puppet, Eddie's normals, can only be inputted this way. Tech is either one of 3 things. It can be when you press a button to get out of a falling state, or it can be short for technique, which is to say a new interesting interaction found by the community. For example, the Axel Bomber loop is very important tech to Axel's game plan. The last thing it could be is throwing your opponent at the same time or shortly after they throw you to push the opponent off of you. This is called a throw tech. Chicken blocking is a block strategy that can only be used in games with air blocking. Instead of blocking by holding down and back, you block by holding up and back. That way, you don't have to worry about blocking low or high, since air block blocks both low and high. A cross-up is when an attack hits the back of an opponent, forcing them to switch the side they are holding to block. An easy way to do this is to jump over an opponent, and then hit them with the back of a hitbox. A cross-under is when the opponent is the one that jumps, and then you dash behind them while they're in the air. An anchor is the last character that you use in a tag team fighting game. This character acts as your final stand, so usually you use your strongest character as an anchor. You must also pick a character who functions well without a team to support him, as when you send your anchor out, your other 2 team members will likely already be defeated. A support is a special option usable in tag team fighting games, where one of your 3 characters drops down in the middle of the match, throws out an attack, and then goes back up. Super armored moves are attacks that can take just one attack and keep going. Smash players call this plain old armor. Hyper armored moves are attacks that can take infinite attacks and still keep going. Smash players, for some reason, call this one super armor. Plain and simple, an infinite is a combo that goes on forever.
You wanna learn how to do a fucking infinite?
A move that will correct the side you are facing during its active frames. For example, when Anji from Guilty Gear guard points a move and inputs his K cancel, he will turn around and do the K cancel, even if the opponent is behind him. That's all the terms for today. Again, if I missed any you know about, please leave a comment with the term and definition so I can update the script for later release. For now though, that's all. This has been Adventure, and I hope to see you in the next one. Peace.